5 disciplines. This is a simpler way to talk about it, and it was not present in the first edition because really it only became clear in the years after. In the new revised edition of the 5th discipline, this picture is right in the introductory chapter. And it's a way to talk about what I wrote here is core leadership capacities. What is the nature of this capacity building process for every one of us, regardless of our formal position or role in growing as a leader? I spend about a month a year in China, and I have for about 15 years. In the Confucian tradition in China, they have a very simple phrase. To become a leader, you must first become a human being. What I wrote over here is creating. Sometimes we call this the creative orientation. Sometimes we use the word aspiration. Good managers are responsible for processes that allow people to create something, to bring something into reality. So when I use the word creating, I mean it in a very basic sense, what the word literally means, to bring into reality. What is the first question you must always be dealing with? What do you want to create? What? Exactly. The answer to that question, historically, is called a vision. A lot of people think in the business world, well, obviously this is really important in the tech world, in the high technology world, because people are always creating new projects, new products, new visions, very visionary. We tend to associate those industries with being very creative, very visionary. What about more traditional businesses that aren't just technology and creating new products continually? Do you think this also matters? Of course. What I wrote below this word creating is one of the 5 disciplines called personal mastery. That's the discipline that has a lot to do with my personal vision. So in my developing as a leader, in each of us growing and developing a leader, one of the questions we always need to be asking ourselves is, what do I want to create? What do I want to see happen here? What are the accomplishments that really matter to me? What do we want to achieve? The second thing it says there is building shared vision. Because in any work setting, in any organizational setting, it's not just my personal vision that matters, but it's our shared visions. What do we want to create? What do we want to see accomplished? One of the key principles from what we've learned over the years about this whole leg of the stool, this creating leg, is that without personal visions, you never get shared visions. What really matters, ultimately, is that each person can identify what they're doing in the organization and why it matters to them personally. So this alignment between personal vision and shared visions is really the source of the energy in any enterprise. When that discipline of regularly engaging in the process of building shared vision, when that discipline is not present, people lose their energy. Why are we doing what we're doing? Oh, we're solving this problem, we're solving this problem, we've got this crisis, we've got this fire we have to put out. They're just reacting continually, right? That's the way a lot of people feel in organizations. Just react, react, react. This problem, that problem. They just forget. Why do we have to solve this problem? If you're in a position of leadership, you never, ever stop working on building that shared vision. It's never ending. But we know the difference between fixing all those problems and having a sense of vitality. This is true in organizations too. Managers often think they have to fix all their problems. And he had this beautiful phrase. He said, all they really have to do is outlive many of the problems. The problems will solve themselves often. He said, but managers obsess about solving all their problems. And one of the reasons is we forget that there's something more important. So this left leg of the stool, this creating leg, is all about this very simple question. What do we want to create? What do we want to bring into reality? So that's this left leg of the stool. This middle leg, the word I wrote here is reflect. We usually call this the domain of reflective conversation. But the meaning of it is often not very clear to people, because the meaning of it really comes from understanding the nature of awareness. We do not see reality. We interact with reality. We do not describe the world we see. We see the world we know how to describe. Our seeing reflects our history. One of you, in your opening comment, used the term mental models. But we have a lot of mental models. We have internalized perceptions, assumptions, memories. We have a lot from our lived experience in those different systems. Our awareness of our awareness, our appreciation of the limitations of our own awareness is absolutely crucial in shaping the quality of conversation. The reason all that's important is that when we really understand that, certain things will happen in our attitude, in our orientation, and ultimately in our conversations. Sounds so simple, but is actually not so easy. Because when we listen, we're always being triggered, stimulated by thoughts and feelings that come from what we hear, which then we get caught up in our own feelings. And after a while we realize, oh, I stopped listening. I should give my attention back to the person I'm listening to. That's a small example of the nature of human awareness. And it's not a problem, it's inevitable. The question is not whether or not we get caught up in our own thoughts and feelings. The question is, do we notice? Do we notice that we're caught in our own thoughts and feelings? Because as soon as we notice it, something interesting happens in our awareness, we come back. We become present again. The problem is not mental models. The problem is we forget we have mental models. And we begin to treat our mental models as if they are reality. That's the problem. The problem is not that we have different views. The problem is when we think our view is the right view, and your view is the wrong view. When I force another to think in the way that I think, it is a violent act, even though there may be no physical violence. Think of all the embedded conflicts in the world that ultimately have their roots in mental models that are no longer seen as mental models. They are the truth. Real listening is an act of love. We are operating out of a desire, a deep desire to allow the other person to be a legitimate other, to really hear what they say, but more than that, to feel the person behind the words. You might say to listen to the person, not just the words. And it has an immediate impact on the quality of relationship. This is what we call the domain of reflection. We really don't have to agree. Agreement is not very important. As human beings, we will naturally disagree. But when we disagree in this kind of larger context of genuine respect, then we can learn. This person, she says something that seems crazy to me. It doesn't make any sense to me. I don't understand why she says that. And I listen. Even though I have all those associations in my mental model, but I listen, and in that gesture, I may learn something. I may start to see the world in a little different way because she is seeing something that I don't see. And rather than just saying, well, what's wrong with her, when I really have built this discipline to listen, I might learn what's incomplete in me. Agreement is actually not very important, in my experience, in creating great teams, in working on truly complex and conflictual issues. It's absolutely legitimate and often very important that people have disagreements in a context of love. It makes all the difference in the world. So that's why this leg of the stool is always about the underpinnings, you might say, of the quality of connectedness, the quality of relationship. We have traditionally called this the domain of seeing the larger system, systems thinking. Sometimes we call it understanding complexity, meaning interdependence. But different people, different organizations who have their own distinctive visions and aspirations and enter into a different quality of relational world. They create a relational field that's very different. Eventually start to see the larger system in a way they never saw it before. Alain has a wonderful phrase for this. He calls this the relational field. The quality of the relationships that connect people through really creating a quality of reflection and some beginnings of shared aspiration, then your ability to see the system is totally different. But the idea of the three-legged stool is a metaphor that if you remove any one leg of that stool, it will fall. They're equally important. For example, systems thinking is intuitive, but it's not easy if you have no vision. Vision is very important for systems thinking to happen. And the practical reason has to do with time horizon. Whenever you start looking at more fundamental issues, you deal with time delays. Usually the fundamental issues take time. So I just think it is a very interesting example that you must build into the rhythms of the organization reflection. And it's not easy. But it's only not easy, I think, because people get confused. People get confused. Because the world around moves so fast, they think they have to move fast. In order to be effective in very fast-moving, very surprising situations, we have to know how to slow down. So the faster the world around us moves, the more our awareness is everything. And to develop that awareness, we need to learn to slow down. So there's obviously a principle here, and maybe it's a good way to end the morning. The principle being that when we let the outside come inside, it's a problem. When we let the frenzy and the quick movement outside become what's going on inside, it's a problem. When we let the fear on the outside go into the inside, it's a problem. When we let the cynicism that's all around us become our own cynicism, it's a problem. As human beings, we can actually control something. It takes a lifetime to develop this ability, but we can control our inner state. It's not caused by the outer state. It's just circumstances. It's one of the basic principles of all human development. So what it means to grow and develop as a leader is to cultivate the inner state.